بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، فلما رأينا النساء سرجك ملويا فلما رأينا النساء جوادك مغزيا ونظرنا سرجك ملويا برزنا من الخدور ناشرات الشعور. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma. A third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Were the veils of the ladies removed in Karbala? Did they themselves remove their scarves on the 10th of Muharram? Were they unveiled by the opposition? Indeed, a point in which there continuously is a discussion, and indeed, in some cases, the subject of controversy surrounds this particular area. That in the eyes of some, what exactly happened to the ladies of Al Muhammad salawatullah wa salamu alayhim? Their veils, were they the same veils that remained with them from their journey to Medina until Karbala, or their journey from Karbala till Kufa, or their journey from Kufa till Sham? Or indeed, was there an attack on these veils? Were they the ones who themselves took off their veils, or was it the opposition who did this? Many see this as quite a vague area, because indeed you'll see that many of us, without a doubt, are affected by this particular incident in the story. If you ask many people, what is the most tragic of tragedies from Karbala to Sham, you'll see that many people will say what took place to the ladies on the 10th of Muharram and what happened after the 10th of Muharram. But indeed, likewise, you'll see that many of us, because of this vagueness, are not sure exactly how much of a physical attack took place on the veils of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Was it a case that there was a veil on their face and that veil was removed? Was it the veil on their hair? Say, for example, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam was wearing a cover on her hair, what we today term as the hijab. Was this hijab ripped off by the opposition or not? Even when you look at the noha that was recited, before I sat up here, you would have seen that the reciter said, and you decorated your spears with the veils, or the spears were decorated with the veils. This gives the indication to some, especially amongst the ladies, that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam had their hijab completely removed. That their ladies, on their way to Kufa, and especially in the land of Sham, their hijabs were completely removed. Others, for example, even have in their poems lines such as, you used your hair to cover your face. You sometimes hear certain people in their Noha or in their Latmiya of the different cultures of Shia around the world who say that the ladies covered their face with their hair. Some of these poets may say this metaphorically. Others of the poets may actually say this literally, that there are some, if you ask them today, in parts of Pakistan and India especially, if you were to ask them that the ladies, when they went to Kufa, did they have any hijab? They'll say, no, none. Say, even in Sham, say, no hijab whatsoever. Say, well, what happened? Some of them will say, well, they themselves either were the ones who had to take them off out of emotion, or the more popular opinion was that the soldiers of Umar bin Sa'ad and the soldiers of Shimr bin al-Jawshan and others were the ones who attacked the veils of the ladies of Al-Muhammad. This subject becomes one of the utmost importance for a number of reasons. As in, someone might argue that what difference will it make to me whether Zainab had her hijab on or didn't have her hijab on? Of course it makes a great difference. Because on the first level, there are many in the world today who contemplate, should we keep our hijab on or off? Today, when we see with Islamophobia on the first level, there are a number of countries in the world today where a person thinks twice about wearing their hijab. You may have a sister, you may have a wife, you may have a daughter who reaches the age of 9, 10, 11, 12. And in your household, you have a decision to make. That decision may be based on Europe or North America, wherever you may be living in relation to the Islamophobia of the time. Even those in India have to make this decision as well now. Because subhanallah, how in the past, Europe and North America may have had more question marks about someone who wears a veil or a hijab. But when you come towards today, you see that a country like India, which has more Muslims than the majority of countries in the world today, there are girls who may be banned from wearing hijab in one institution or another. Because of that, therefore, that daughter may ask a question that should I continue to wear hijab or not? The parents may ask the question that should we make our daughters wear hijab or not? Maybe our daughters may face tough times, stressful times, difficult times. This subject relates to them. Because at the end of the day, if the granddaughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa had to face difficulties with their hijab, then we'll all face difficulties in one way or the other as well. As in, these were the ones who found a safe haven in Medina when their grandfather was the Holy Prophet. Did they ever imagine, I ask you all a question, did Zainab or Kulthum ever imagine one day that they would be attacked on their veil? Did they ever imagine? Yet subhanallah, likewise with us today, if I am asking a question, secondly, there may be some who come for ziyarah and they don't wear hijab. Of course, in Karbala or Najaf, A, you have to wear hijab. Why? Because you would look like the odd one out in reality. B, culturally, even the people of Karbala and the people of Najaf may not necessarily be the biggest supporters of hijab, but culturally, they will have to wear because that's part of a holy city. But on the third level, and most important, is I may be contemplating going home after ziyarah and not wearing. I may have come to ziyarah not wearing. I may go home and not wear. And of course, everyone is on their own journey, that there's no doubt about. But when I discuss the ladies of Ahlul Bayt from Karbala to Kufa to Sham, I can actually relate to their story. Why? Because I may find in their story that hijab may empower me, that hijab may give me strength, that hijab can help me change society. Because if these ladies' hijab, whether social or physical, was attacked and they fought for it, then they fought for it for me not to wear it or for me to wear it. At the end, Zainab alayhi salam can either become a mythical figure who we cry about, or becomes a role model who we follow. That's the decision we have to make. Either I take Zainab alayhi salam as a role model who I follow in every aspect of my life, or I take her as an emotional figure who I might have the odd vow in her name, I might have the odd nidhr or mannat in her name, I might turn up for her majalis out of love for her. But then the next step, would be the step that maybe Zainab wants from me. And that might be the step of what she went through from Karbala to Kufa to Sham. Now, methodologically, how do I decipher what exactly took place to the hijab of the ladies of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? It's not as easy as it looks. Why? Because the reality is, on the first level in this dissection, there are a number of different words related to the veil in early Islamic or early Arabic literature. What do I mean? If you were to ask the majority of Muslims today, name me all the words related to the veil. Today, you'll find the most famous of those words is which one? Which word? Hijab. Ask any Muslim in the world today, would you translate the veil into what? They'll say to you, hijab. Well, this, without a doubt, is the most famous word. And hence on YouTube, you'll always find that we're asked this question, because this is a fundamental issue in methodology for this dissection. On YouTube, you'll always hear people saying, show me hijab in the Quran. Don't you always hear that? And whenever someone who's not wearing hijab comes with this YouTube video, it's a bit of a shocker. Why? Because there's no verse in the Quran that actually tells you to wear hijab. None in the Quran, barring the mentioning of the word hijab in relation to the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, and that there should be a barrier between them and those who come and visit the Prophet, peace be upon his family. The reality is that if my daughter today came and asked me and said to me that where in the Quran does it say I have to wear hijab, the first thing I need to do is I need to give her the different words being used in Arabic for the word veil. What are they? Veil in Arabic in the beginning is the most obvious, and that is libas, clothing. At the end of the day, if you ask any Arab what is clothing in Arabic, they'll say to you libas. If you look in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah 7 verse 26 says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya bani Adam, قد أنزلنا عليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى ذلك خير. Allah in the Quran, the first word for cloth in the Quran is the word libas. God says, O son of Adam, O children of Adam, what did we do? We sent upon you 3 pieces of cloth. The first of them is what? The first is to protect your private parts. The second of them is what? Is to beautify you as well. The third piece of cloth is what? Libasut taqwa. Dhalika khair. That always alongside the clothing that you wear, if there's no taqwa, there's no point wearing that full clothing. There has to always be taqwa alongside that clothing. So the first word in Arabic, when I'm looking at clothing in that time, which discusses what happened to the ladies of Al Muhammad, the first word is libas. Second word in Arabic is which one when talking about covering or clothing? Khimar. Ask any of the Arabs what is alcohol in Arabic. What will they say to you? Khamr. Why is alcohol known as khamr? Because anything that covers is related to what? Is related to the idea that if I drink alcohol, it will cover my reasoning. Hence, khimar is the word used in the Quran for what? For the covering of the head. When someone now comes and asks you, where in the Quran does it tell me to cover my head? I have to look for the word khimar. Notice I haven't even come to the word hijab. In the Quran, libas. In the Quran, khimar. Quran says in Surah 24, verse 30 onwards, وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ وَيَحْفَظُ فُرُوجَهُم. And then it comes, when it comes to what? وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُ فُرُوجَهُم. When it comes to the nisa, it says وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. Tell the believing woman, look at the first hijab was for the men, not the woman. The second hijab was for what? The second veil was for the woman. Tell the believing woman to do what? قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. To lower from their gaze. Notice it says lower from gaze, not lower gaze. Otherwise you'd be hitting every brick wall at the end. lower from the gaze, and to what? And to hide their private parts. قل للمؤمنات يغضضن من أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها, and to not reveal the finer apparel except that which is made apparent. And then وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرُهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ, and for them to strike their head covering over the what? Over their juyub. Now, when I look at these verses in the Quran, they're not as clear as just saying it is wajib for a woman to wear hijab. Nor do the maqatil just say, and Zainab's hijab was ripped off. Why? Because automatically I'm looking at different words that the Arabs are using. The Arabs for all the cloth are using libas. The Arabs in terms of head covering, so if your daughter says, Dad, where in the Quran does it say I have to cover my head? You show her the verse on khimar, because that is head covering. You show her this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and that they have to strike their head covering over their jiyub. Jiyub, the difference of opinion on what the jiyub are. Some say you strike your head covering over your bosom area to cover this area. So there are some ladies in Arabia. Remember, in Arabia, religious and non-religious women were covering. Don't imagine that just because someone wasn't a Muslim in Arabia, they weren't wearing a covering. They were. But what were they doing with the covering? They were covering their head, but the ears and the neck area was all showing. What we call today in some of our languages a bandana hijab. Yes? Bandana, what is that? That's a person wearing a head covering. And look, even those who are wearing this, when I give this lecture, by the way, my only intention is to try and look at the different types of apparels there were. Everyone at the end of the day takes step-by-step journeys in their spirituality. So the Arabian woman, they would cover their heads. So the Quran told that this head covering that you have called the khimar, now you have to strike it over where? Some said the jiyub was to strike over the bosom. Others, for example, non-Shia schools, a lot of them are of the opinion that you strike that head covering even over your face. That the real veil in Islam is to cover the face and to cover the bosom area. Hence, some of the maraji', you'll find that their wives will not leave their homes except that the whole of their face is covered. Aslan, why go far? Even your local Maulana, local imam of your mosque, some of you may have never seen the face of his wife. Do you agree or no? Why? The wife is part of the community. The wife comes to the mosque, but she covers her face. Scholars like Ayatollah al-Khu'i, may Allah bless his soul. Ayatollah al-Khu'i was of the scholars who was of the opinion that if you are going to be in front of those men who may be foreign men, for example, to you, that you may have to cover your face as well. That's why you'll find some of the muqalladeen of Ayatollah al-Khu'i will cover their face when they go out in public, because in his opinion, the face was also that which had to be covered. Other ulama said the eyes could show. Others said no, the face and the palms of the hands can be shown, but that this covering on the face was an extra covering. No one thing. That sometimes it's even harder to know the exact hijab of Bibi Fatima or Bibi Zainab or others. Why? Because of a number of reasons. Number one, most of our ahadith on hijab relate to hijab in salah. And everyone wears hijab in salah. Virtually most of the ahadith on hijab or on the veil are on the fiqh side of salah. We don't have many about the rest. So now what do we have? I have the word hijab, but I said in the Quran, the word hijab doesn't refer to clothing. I have the word khimar, head covering. I also have the word libas, general. I have another word which I find in the literature of Ahlul Bayt. Not hijab, not khimar, not libas. I have the word sitr. Sitr means what? If a lady is mastura, that means that lady is covered. There's an outer covering and an inner covering. So sitr is another word. Another word which I find in early literature related to Ahl al-Bayt is what? Is uzur. Uzur means what? Sometimes in East Africa, some of you here who are from East Africa, especially those from Somalia, for example, or even parts of Mombasa you've seen, sometimes they wear what looks like a cloth on the lower part of the body. Yeah, normally as a person feels chilled, it's a hot day, they wear a cloth on the lower part of the body. I think in Western terminology it got turned into a sarong or something. But you have that in the literature as well. Which literature? The literature I'm talking about related to Karbala as well. Sometimes a person thinks when I'm going to give a lecture on the veil of the woman in the literature of Karbala, I see uzur, I see sitr, I see all of these words. Now I'm in a dilemma because I'm trying to understand which part of them got attacked. Another word which I find in the Quran for the veil is what? Jilbab. How many of you have heard of jilbab? In the Quran, Surah 33, verse 59, I see, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, qul li azwajika, wa banatika, and who else? Wa nisa'il mu'mineen, yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihin. I'm telling you that our madrasas in the Shia world, they need a whole chapter on the veil to reform the basic teachings we've had for hundreds of years on the veil. Because if you ask many of our children, they cannot name you khimar and hijab and libas and uzur and jilbab. Many will not name you. Why? Because our madrasa curriculum is too simple for these things. And in a world where whether you're in France or you're in India, hijab is attacked, the veil is attacked, you need to know every level. What's a jilbab? A jilbab, the Quran says, O Prophet of God, tell your wives and your daughters and the females of the believers for them to wear a jilbab. Hold on. The Quran said wear a khimar. Khimar is head covering. Jilbab is what? Outer covering. Now, I'm trying to imagine Bibi Zainab alayha salam. And I'm trying to imagine all of these in Zainab and Kulthum alayhim salam. True? Because if the Quran is the word of Allah, then Zainab, no doubt in her behavior, is the walking Quran. True? Therefore, Zainab alayhi salam is not gonna do these things because of culture. You know, some people say to you, these things, hijab and that, the Arabs were doing it because of their culture. Ahl al-Bayt are outside of the laws of culture, above the laws of culture. Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, if the Quran has mentioned to me khimar, they'll observe khimar. If the Quran has mentioned jilbab, they'll also make sure that they have a jilbab. Jilbab means what? Today, when you go, for example, to the Khalij, you'll see that the ladies in the Khalij, many of them will wear like a black abaya. Under that abaya, that lady may be wearing, for example, a t-shirt. She may be wearing, for example, trousers, jeans, whatever. But over that abaya, why? She could easily wear a t-shirt. She could wear, for example, let's say a sweatshirt and jeans, a hoodie and jeans, hoodie, jeans with a veil. That is still counted as sitr. But there are levels that the Quran wants you to reach physically and spiritually. Can I, for example, now in the West, tell a girl who's wearing a veil, khimar, tick. She's wearing a sweatshirt, she's wearing jeans, she goes to work as a doctor, lawyer, finance, madrasa, bank, school. Can I tell her that you're not observing the veil? No, I can't, because that lady is on a path of honor, dignity, respect. But when the Quran brought in terminologies like jilbab, jilbab is an outer covering on top of that which protects your private parts. Some of our ladies here in Iraq, some might wear an abaya on the head, on top of a abaya underneath. Some might wear, for example, a long coat with something underneath. These could all be different forms of what the Quran wanted. But now, I look in early Islamic literature, I'm trying to picture Sayyida Zainab and the ladies of the 10th of Muharram. They would have hijab in the sense of the whole meaning of veiling. Hijab is the more expansive meaning. They would have what we now call and understand as a jilbab. They definitely have the khimar. They would also be of those who could have could have their face veil on clear for everyone. We said that some of the ulama believed that the earliest of the ladies definitely covered their faces. Hence, why do they believe this? Because they say when you look at the laws of Hajj, it says the face must be uncovered when you do Hajj. Well, if their face is already uncovered, why are they told this? Unless in those early days of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, the women were already covering their face. In Hajj, can the lady keep a cover on her face when she's doing Hajj or no? No. So now why do I need a hadith? It showed that the highest level of veiling in early Islam was to cover their face. Not that I come to Ayatollah Sistani, for example, may Allah lengthen his life. When I come to Ayatollah Sistani, it's not like he's going to say to you that you must cover your face. At the end of the day, he will allow you to have your face showing or to have your palms showing, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe that, for example, a lady can reach a level where in her context, now does that bring more attention? It doesn't. That's a debate for another day. But what we find with Al Muhammad, therefore, coming to Karbala 61 after Hijrah, we ask this question. How could we picture what Ahlul Bayt dressed like in the perfect sense of hijab? We will see covering of the face, covering of the head, covering of the body, maybe another layer of covering on top of that covering. If in Karbala there are some ladies who walk to the haram, wallah, you cannot even see the shape of that lady walking. And that lady is covered completely. But what is that lady compared to Imam Ali alayhi salam's daughter? Yes. At the end of the day, they are the ones, and we read the hadith. What do they say? Zainab's shadow was never seen. Zainab's face definitely was never seen. The voice of Zainab alayhi salam, when she would give majalis, she would give majalis to the ladies, and nobody would know her voice, to the extent that when Ibn Ziyad said, who is that lady who talks? And they said to him, that's Zainab, daughter of Ali. He said, that's Zainab. And at the end, after insult, at the end he says, to her, you're like your father, you're a brave poet and nothing more. But for Ibn Ziyad, he had never, and none of Kufa, and none of Medina, had ever seen Zainab alayhi salam. For a historian, that becomes difficult. Why? Because when a historian sees there's 20 ladies in the side of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, or 30, or however, as a historian, I'm thinking, who's Zainab? Which one? Which one's Kulthum? Which one's the wife, say, Rabab? Which one? It's not that easy for a person to decipher. Therefore, how do I then reach a conclusion as to what happened with the ladies? One of the contentious issues is the lines I quoted at the beginning of this lecture from Ziyarat al-Nahiyah. In Ziyarat al-Nahiyah comes a controversial line. And that line is discussed by many. فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَا النِّسَاءُ جَوَادَكَ مَغْزِيًّا وَنَظَرْنَ سَرْجَكَ عَلَيْهِ مَلْوِيًّا. When the lady saw that your horse was coming back to the tent now, and that the saddle was no longer there with a rider on it, what did they do at that moment? بَرَزْنَ مِنَ الْخُدُورِ. They came out from their safe place. نَاشِرَاتِ الشُّعُورِ. نَاشِرَاتِ الشُّعُورِ is translated in English as they let out their hair. Notice here that this is even a contradiction in what some of the cultures do. In the Indo-Pak subcontinent, the majority believe, no, Shimr and the others were the ones who attacked the ladies. Whereas in Ziyarat al-Nahiyah, it doesn't say the opposition took their veils off. Ziyarat al-Nahiyah said they let their hair out. Because of this, it caused controversy. Many ulama said there's no way that this could happen. But hold on a minute, I read the translation in English. It said that the ladies came out of their khudur in the translation in English. It says the ladies came out of their tents when they saw the horse, Dhul Janah, the horse of Imam al-Hussein, alayhi salam, coming towards the tent. The ladies came out, they let loose their hair. Now when I look at it, I'm like, hold on, can this be true? Someone says no chance. Zainab alayhi salam would never let loose her hair. Someone attacks her, yes, but she doing it, no. First point, for those who say that Zainab wouldn't, well, her mother nearly did. So what do you mean her mother nearly did? After Saqifa, when they kept coming to the house of her mother, look in Al-Kafi, look in the Ihtijaj, look in the Mustadrak. Does not Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, when they kept coming to the house and then they wanted to take Imam Ali alayhi salam, look in our books what it says. She says, La what? La anshuranna sha'ri. I will release my hair and I will place the shirt of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi on my head. And my father and my family are no less than the camel of Salih alayhi salam. Camel of Salih, you know, when the people killed the camel, Allah punished the people of Thamud. Fatima al-Zahra, what did she say? La anshuranna sha'ri. I will be the one who will release my hair and I will make sure that I come out. And she says this in front of the first Khalifa. So some people, what did they say? Some people said that, look, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, before Zainab, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam had said that I'm ready to release my hair out of anger for what the caliphs have done in relation to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. That was their first point. They said the second point, ziyarat al-Nahiya. Third point that they said was that Shimr and the opposition blatantly on Shama Ghariban, there is no doubt that they came with their horses and they began to attack the ladies of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Therefore those ladies were attacked by the opposition, by their enemies and so on. Fourthly, they say that Sayyidah Zainab alayha salam in Sham, she herself in front of Yazid makes it clear that is it fair that you disgrace us? Hatakta suturahun. You are the one who has disgraced our honor. Therefore they say that the proofs are clear that Zainab, like her mother Fatima, was ready to release her hair out of anger, out of anguish, and that the opposition also attacked Zainab, and that the opposition also were the ones who pulled off the hijab of Zainab. And then others come and say, look at the Nohas. They say in our Nohas we say that they took their hair and they covered their faces when they went through the markets of Kufa and the markets of Sham. And then you have Arabic latmiyas as well, which talk about hijab, Zainab and the ripping of hijab. All of these points are placed on one side. How do we reply to all of these? Do we reach a conclusion that when these lines are said, this means that this is what Ahlul Bayt do? Let's examine them one by one. Number one, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam in our books, yes. Fatima al-Zahra said that I would release my hair. First question. I would release my hair in Al-Kafi, she says, because there is another hadith that says she did release her hair. If she did release her hair, then she done it amongst the ladies who were alongside her. Because the hadith says when she left the house, she was wearing the shirt of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa as her covering. So that means if she released her hair, it was inside with the ladies, not in front of men. Number two, Al-Kafi says Fatima al-Zahra doesn't just say, I release my hair. She says, I would release my hair if it wasn't a sin to do so. Many times, people mention, لَأَنْشُرَنَّ شَعْرِي, that I would release my hair, but finish it. In Al-Kafi, the hadith says that Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam said, I would release my hair were it not for the fact that it would be a sin to do so. And that Bibi Fatima is of course ma'sooma and would never come near any sin like that. That's number two. But then someone says, Sayyidina, look at the ziyarat al-Nahiya. It says clearly, barazna min al-khudur, they came out of the tents, nashirat al-shu'ur. First opinion, shu'ur, one of the scholars said shu'ur is not their hair. releasing shu'ur, he said shu'ur also means release of emotion. What do I mean? In Arabic, what is the name for a poet? If someone is a poet, what do they call him in Arabic? Sha'ir. Why? Why is he called a sha'ir? It should be, call someone sha'ir, it should be Mr. Hez. Yes? Why is the poet called sha'ir? For what reason? Reason is, sometimes if I ask someone who's Arabic, I say, Shunu shu'urak? What is your feeling? Hence the poet, when they write, the idea is they're putting their feeling. Ihsas is one. Shu'ur, one of the meanings is emotion. When a sha'ir writes, why do they call him sha'ir? Because he is writing with feeling. He is writing with poetry, with emotion. Hence, one of the opinions was that in Ziyarat al-Nahiya, when it said, Nashirat al-Shu'ur, it means they have come and they released their emotions. So therefore, that was an opinion that was given. I differ with this opinion. How do I differ with this opinion? I say no, they released their hair. I believe that they did release their hair. But release their hair, what does it mean? Barazna min al-khudur. Everyone focus on this, please. Barazna min al-khudur is normally translated in English as they came running out of the tents. But if it's literally tents, it should be barazna min al-mukhayyam, for example. Or barazna min al... I don't know. You could use another word such as fustat. Notice in the ziyarah, it is not mukhayyam or khiyam that is used, nor fustat that is used. Khudur. Khudur means what? Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, that area for them was created as a safe space. Khudur is wrong in English to say tent. A tent is part of a larger safe space. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, before Ashura, made sure that there was a whole strategy created around the tents of Ahlul Bayt, so that their enemy would find it difficult. If they were to attack the ladies, they could not come directly. There would be either some fire there would be a khandaq there. Also, the ladies, if they wanted to, could have enough space that if they were going from tent to tent, there would be enough of a gap with the opposition where the opposition could not even see them. Therefore, barazna min al-khudur doesn't mean they came running out of their tents to the men releasing their hair. It means they came in their safe space and released their hair. What does that mean? Because someone says, okay, they've come in their safe space, but they still release their hair. The Arabs, when the moment pain or tragedy would affect them, they would release their hair, which was tied in a bun, and they would let it out as a sign of mourning. But they would do that under the veil they were wearing. Therefore, nashirat al-shu'ur, nashr is different from kashf. Kashf, I'm openly showing you my hair. Nashirat, I'm releasing my hair. I release my hair under the veil I'm wearing, alongside those who are mahram to me. There's no way Zainab alayha salam, who is the mountain of the veil, would forget the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No way. No way. Zainab alayhi salam, number one. Number two, Zainab alayhi salam is the lady of Asmat al-Sughra. Imam Zayn al-Abidin is the meaning of Asma. When Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam is in a tent, you think Imam Zayn al-Abidin, you think the ladies would not have the respect to the position of Imam Zayn al-Abidin as the Imam of Allah on earth? But B, Imam Zayn al-Abidin would have automatically stopped somebody who did this. Imam Zayn al-Abidin would have turned around. If someone was to take off their veil, Imam would have turned around and said, what is this? In the same way, his father, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, came to Zainab alayhi salam and said to her very clearly that Zainab, try and remain patient with whatever you're going to see. Allah will protect you. Now, one of the ulama said, I don't believe that their hijab was attacked. Why? He said, because Allah said that I'll protect you. Or Imam al-Hussein said that Allah will protect you. Therefore, their hijabs or their veils could not have been attacked. No, there's a possibility. There's a possibility that the cloths were ripped off. They did it themselves, Ahl al-Bayt, the Bibis? No, no. The Bibis did not take off their veils and say that, no. Could the opposition have? Yes. Yes. I am not going to sit here and say that there is no way it could have happened. No. I think that there is a possibility. And remember, people can differ with me in their conclusions, but at the end of the day, if you have your sources, your literature, may Allah bless you. But what you find is that certainly there was a certain attack on the ladies that meant what they may have worn coming from Medina may not have been the same exactly as what they wore leaving Karbala. How? If you have, for example, say the Zainab's face is covered. What's there to stop Shimr bin Diljoshan from pulling the face cover off? What's to stop him? Someone says, yes, but how do you prove that? Her sermon in Sham. We mentioned earlier, Abdayta wujuhahun. When it says that, means what? You revealed our faces, she says to Yazid. Is it fair that you disgraced us? By what? By unveiling our faces. Look at the disgrace for the ladies of Al Muhammad. What was their disgrace? That people could see us. From the stranger to the acquaintance. From the noble to the ignoble. While there was no one to defend them. Is there a possibility therefore that Zainab alayhi salam's face was shown? Yes. I think that if any attack happened on the veil of Zainab alayhi salam, then it was the attack on the face veil of Zainab alayhi salam. Could it have gone further? Could be. In the Bihar, there is the narration when Imam al-Hussein's daughter alayhi salam says to her auntie, auntie, هل من خرقة? Is there a kharqa? Now look what we have. Hijab, khimar, libas, uzur, jilbab, kharqa. What's a kharqa? Now I see this in the literature that the niece of Bibi Zainab says to her, oh Amma, my auntie, هل من خرقة? To do what? What does she want to do with this kharqa? أستر بها رأسي. A kharqa is a ripped up piece of cloth. The niece tells the aunt, is there a kharqa? Kharqa is a ripped piece of cloth. Is there any kharqa that I could use so that I can cover my head? Now, cover my head. Does that mean that the head had no cover? Possibly. Or it could mean the head had a cover, but they wanted another cover. Again, can I conclude? I can't. But then the auntie replies to the niece and says to her, I have none to cover mine. Imagine. This is a difficult line in Bihar al-Anwar. The niece says, auntie, is there a kharqa I could use to cover my head? And the reply is, but I don't have mine. And then she says, she showed me her head. And she says that when I saw her head, I saw injuries on her body as well. Yeah? What does that then show? That shows that the head has been attacked of Zainab alayhi salam, and that it shows her body has been attacked, and that there's a possibility in the attack on those bodies, some cloth may have been ripped off by some of these soldiers. Someone says, but Sayyid, it says Imam al-Hussein told his sister, Allah will protect you. There's no way men could do that. I reply, Allah did protect them by allowing them to come back to Medina miraculously. How Yazid did not end up killing them is unbelievable, and that is Allah's protection. But Allah's protection doesn't have to entail that it covers you from animals like Shimr bin al-Jawshan and from the other animals that were there in Yazid's army. Therefore, taking all of this on board, one may conclude that Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam themselves, they never ever released their hair or forgot the laws of Allah. Never. But that the opposition certainly went about a method of disgracing those veils. That's why that latmiya before I started, when it said they decorated their spears with your veils, could be the face veil could have been decorated on a spear for everyone to see. At the end of the day, Zainab said, Abdate, Hatakt, you done all of this. Sayyidah Zainab in her sermon, she would not say these things unless there was a monumental attack on them. Before we continue on to the conclusion, what do we gain from this today? We gain from it first and foremost that all of our ladies have the potential of a Zainab in them. Never forget this. That at the end of the day, if a lady out there thinks to herself, I'm struggling with hijab, then hold on to Zainab alayhi salam. If a lady out there wants to wear, but then she is told by others, not now, later, you're not ready. Not ready for who? Can you be ready for Shimr and Umar bin Sa'ad? Can you be ready for any of these? Number 3, know that sometimes in the world we live in, there are places where the covering may be difficult, no denying. But there are others where people have no excuse. There are some countries in the world, if you don't wear hijab, in that country, what excuse can you offer? Especially those who live in Muslim majority countries, what excuse can you offer? There are those who say, I can't because of work. There is only one raziq, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are some who say, I can't because I want to get married. Allah will bring the union of love with those who look for higher goals, insha'Allah. There are those who say, we don't want our daughters to. Then why do la'na on Shimr and Umar bin Sa'ad? Why? How many I see in Ziyarat Ashura? La'natullah on Shimr. La'natullah on Umar bin Sa'ad. Why la'na on them? For what reason? They say, do you know what they done to the BBs? They ripped off their hijabs. Well, you're not far away in your behavior. At the end of the day, you may sometimes have a la'na rebound like a boomerang onto you. That the la'na may turn around to you. It's not easy. But all I advise is one thing. And that is, in this generation of gender, this generation of challenges to one's identity, you let your children loose in a certain way, there could be no going back. The shorter the clothing, the more open the clothing. You may always believe that someone has a line of modesty. That's you, your daughter's generation. When it's shown what it's shown in the cinemas, may have lines which are different to what you imagine. Until it gets to an age where you cannot do anything anymore. These ladies, these are the superheroes that we need to talk about. Because in a 1,000-kilometer journey like we discussed last night, being pulled one way and the other, and being attacked one way and the other. And you know what the biggest insult was for all of them? That even Yazid's wife wore a hijab and the granddaughters of Muhammad could not wear. Imagine. The biggest insult. Someone says, what do you mean Yazid's wife? Yazid is a bad man. Bad man does not matter. In front of the public, he has to look religious. Or he has to at least show that our family. Or Arabian culture also has this opinion that you cover anyway. I've seen people who are not Muslims up until 50 years ago in the streets of some countries. They used to cover because the ladies used to have a certain modesty. In India, in Britain, and places like this, ladies who are non-Muslim would cover. So therefore, Yazid's wife, she was covered. No doubt about that. They were all covered there in Sham. And on nights like this, his wife is covered. And Zainab alayhi salam is paraded on the streets of Sham. What an insult. What an insult. That hijab, as the poet said, that was the hijab of Allah on the earth that was attacked. Why the hijab of Allah on the earth that was attacked? For what reason? Well, is it a big statement for me to say the hijab of Allah? No, it's not. The embodiment of God's modesty and the embodiment of honor was Zainab's mother. no doubt. And what Zainab could only hold on to was that my mother was also attacked. True. At the end of the day, Zainab was 5 when her mother was behind the wall and the door. Zainab had seen already the attack on her mother Fatima alayha salam. An attack which is mentioned in all sources of literature. As much as a person wants to say, is this authentic in Sunni literature, is it not authentic? You cannot deny that in the literature there was an existence of a narration or two that said that there was an attack on the house of Zahra alayha salam. But Zainab thought, yes, okay, an attack on my mother, and now an attack on me. And a rib broken with my mother, and my brother's ribs broken in Karbala next to me. Imagine that scene, therefore, that when they come to Sham on a night like this, and the nights like this, of course, is their return to Karbala. But imagine when they come to Sham, they see ladies who have nothing to do with the Risala, with their faces covered, their heads covered. And they look around and they see ladies with bruising all over their faces. And they look around and they see ladies crying, some ladies injured. Imagine how difficult those moments were. Wallah, they took a level of the hijab, the insult of Yazid, that he had someone next to him saying, that young one over there, I want to have her for me. Imagine that not just we will rip off whatever hijab you wear, we are willing to go further than that, until even Sayyida Zainab and others had to stand up. Look at her. The power of this lady is an example to men, not just women. An example to men, wallah al-azim. And therefore they're sitting there in the court of Yazid, and Yazid wants to show a display of these khawarij. Subhanallah, in these coming nights, we'll discuss how is it that Ahlul Bayt reached a level where they were captives in Sham. But what you find was that Yazid wanted to display in front of everybody, in front of his family, in front of his friends, that if any of you dare mess with me, I don't care whether you're a male or female, that's what will happen to you. He got everybody together, and then he sent a message to one of his servants. He said to the servant, please go towards my wife and tell her to get ready, for we're about to begin the celebrations. Allahu Akbar, the celebrations. He said to the lady went. Yazid was married at the time to a lady who knew Zainab many moons back. Allahu Akbar, yes. A lady by the name of Hind, who when she was younger, she was in the house of Zainab alayhi salam. She learned hijab from Zainab. She learned hijab from Zainab. Now she is the wife of Yazid, having been forced, according to certain narrations, to marry Yazid from Muawiyah after she was in the house of Imam Ali, Imam al-Hassan, when she was younger in Medina. Earlier that day, she had asked the question to her servant. Earlier, before Yazid had called her, she had asked, where are these rebels from who have come here, the ones we're displaying? Her servant said to her, Karbala. She looked at the servant as if she had remembered the name somewhere, but she couldn't remember where. They continued talking. Remember, Sayyida Zainab had a sermon around this time, but that Sayyida Zainab also before her sermon had a number of exchanges with Yazid. So one of the exchanges, that lady heard her voice, yes? So she was wondering, who is that? Where is she from? The voice is familiar to me, but she couldn't still grasp. The servant walked in. She said to her, get ready. She said, why? She said, the rebels from Karbala are on display. So that lady got ready. She wore everything. Her hijab, of course, has to wear. And she's a student of Zainab alayhi salam. She came out, and imagine, I want you to all imagine the horrendous scene. Wallah. Zainab and Kulthum on the ground in the palace, and Hind and the rest sitting on the throne. And Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam turning round to who? Turning round towards Kulthum. What does she say to her? You recognize her? And then Kulthum saying to her, who is she? She said, you remember Hind? When she was younger, she was in our house in Medina. She said, that's Hind. She could see them whispering to one another. She looked towards them. She said, where are you people from? At that moment, what happened? Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam looked at her. She said to her, we are from Medina. You know what she did? She came off her throne. She sat on the ground level with them. Allahu Akbar. She sat on the ground level with them. She said, welcome to the people of Medina. Why? She said, you know, when I was younger, I used to serve in a house in Medina. Allahu Akbar. I ask you all a question. How much had Zainab's face changed that she couldn't even recognize her? She just looked at her. She said to her, when I was younger, I served in a house in Medina. May I ask you about the house? Allah. Sayyidah Zainab, with all humility and no anguish, no frustration, nothing, very calm. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam says, and whose house is that? She said, I don't know if you know him or you don't. She said to her, tell me whose house it is. She said, I served in the house of my master Ali ibn Abi Talib. She said to her, I served in the house of my master Ali ibn Abi Talib. She said to her, may I ask you about some of the members of that house? I want you to imagine, how old is this Hind, wife of Yazid? Therefore, who's she going to ask about first? It would have to be with someone who's similar age to her, yes? Sayyidah Zainab said to her, go ahead, ask me about any of the members of that house. She said to her, may I ask you about Abbas, the son of Ali? Allahu Akbar. All of you are next to him tonight. I'm leaving this with you and him now. May I ask you about Abbas, the son of Ali? How does Zainab reply? What do you reply? She said to her, you ask me about Abu al-Fadl. Yes. His head is that head on that spear. Allahu Akbar. She looked towards the spear with her heart broken. She said to her, may I ask you about? Tell me about Abu Abdullah. Tell me. Allahu Akbar. All of us are near him, aren't we? May I ask you about Abu Abdullah? Where is he? She said to her, look at that head on that spear. Allah. That's the head of Abu Abdullah in front of you. Someone says, but his head was next to Yazid. Yazid was playing with his head. You know what the Umayyads did? They would keep taking the head off and placing the head back on. Allahu Akbar. She asked her about Abbas, and then she asked about Hussein. Something clicks in the head. What is it? If Abbas and Hussein are in a place, then Zainab must be there. Never would Abbas and Hussein leave Zainab. She said to her, tell me about Zainab al-Hashimiyya. Tell me about Zainab al-Hashimiyya, I beg you tell me. The poet replies, it's as if Zainab said, if you ask me about Zainab al-Hashimiyya, then I don't know where she is. Truly, where is she? What is Sham? But if you ask me about Zainab al-Masbiyya, Zainab the prisoner, then here I am. Hind at that moment ran out of the court with the tears flowing from her eyes. You know what happened? Her veil fell. When her veil fell, Yazid saw her. He said to her, put on your veil. Her reply breaks all of our hearts. How can you tell me about my veil? And the daughters of Rasulullah have no veil to cover them. You tell me about my veil, and the daughters of Fatima Zahra have nothing to cover.